Her history is disgusting. Abused at 8 and pregnant woman at 10, she was constrained to wed her abuser at 11. She had to leave top high school following the baby's stored upcoming. For year, she stored quiet. But currently, her vote rings precise in chambers wherever the country's laws are done. Her merciless social pleas to end kid wedding are creature heard. Following a life expectancy of fight, Johnson's period has go. Eventually. At 58, she sport a chief complete of heavy, tightly curly hair and a trouser suit. How would do Hillary Clinton pride? She navigates the lobby of the Capitol in a dark binding agent hidden by her leftward hand, a wallet slung above her arm and a brutal sea of definition. I fight to hold step in her as she makes her way history. Cuttlefish-toned photographic celebration Florida in the previous 20th age, as although they were brilliant times for all. History the rows and rows of edged many faces of lawmakers who obtained popularity during these walls. All men, Johnson observes, as we hyphen by. On the winter night, days in the 2018 legal meeting, she is on her way to encounter in a country Sen company sponsoring a draft to eliminate kid wedding in Florida. An identical release has been entered in the building. Johnson has consumable the recent 5-year advocacy lawmakers to halt the type of misuse she incurred in her infancy. Enforced to ban kid wedding by the age of 16 got thrust in the Florida building in 2014 but went anywhere in the Sinead. With later, Johnson's speech include fall on blind ears. Doors include close on her. Before newly. As unbelievable as the May audio, Florida stands poised to be the first country in America to say no, explicitly, to all marriages of minor children. Recent year, Texas and Virginia approved new laws restrictive wedding to such 18 and above, but they done tight exceptions for minor children given age rights by the courts. The billing up the Florida legislative body set 18 as the age for wedding and enable null exceptions. In package 202 of the Sinead Office Space House, Johnson gets a hug of Lauren Volume, a 33-year-old sen of the southward Florida town of a state who herself is a kid misuse surviving and militant. Volume has blonde wool, a Florida tan and large, literary spectacles. Her walls are covered by inspiring quotations of Plato, Shakespeare and though coconut Chanel, if thou re sorrowful, at more than rouge and assault. She displays a yellow metal desktop platter. How asks, which would Beyoncé make? Horace and I include a lot in overall, Volume tells me. Before you put a person on the question, human beings don't know, she adds. Or Horace has been, how person? She has been capable to destigmatize the trial. In Volume, Johnson sees an friend. If the draft passes, Johnson wants to phase a act relying on her 2013 autobiographic Roman, condescending the unforgivable. She's as well drawn up a budgeting for a bus round to contribute knowledge. She asks Volume to assist her brainstorming ways to lift cash. While the draft passes, I wish the society to aware that has happened, Johnson says. I fair wish ideas. The is also new to me. Thou ve been work so difficult to do all the occur, Volume replies. Thou include a lot departure on. Get a breakdown. I can't soften law currently, Johnson says out of indecision. I'm on a travel. I'm upcoming of, I at first tell in Johnson a pair of months ago and was undertaken ago how kid wedding was yet a insistent issue in the joint state. The U.S. Country Division considers constrained wedding a humane rights misuse or, in the instance of minor children, a shape of kid misuse. My own grandma was the identical age as Johnson, 11, while she was marital off to my grandpa. My large auntie was 14 on her marriage date. While her man dead quickly following, she led the strict lifetime of a Indian widowed, ostracized by community before her die at 90 as although she were once to accuse. I was painted to Johnson's history and am though more than so currently, while growing numbers of female are since authorized to say out on misuse. In Florida, Johnson has been instrument. She has been vocals on the brutal history of her infancy. She hopes how one day quickly, she might be capable to stay following to the governor as he signs a kid wedding ban in act. How would be the acknowledgement she has so convincingly desired? Down there has been slight opposition to the draft, although critics would yet love Florida to do exceptions for minor children who are volunteer attending or if their would-be spouses are in the war. Youthful servicemen and female occasionally wish to wed their girlfriends or boyfriends up deployment on hazardous missions. To how reason, Johnson retorts, if you are by 18, you cannot do some legislative decisions. You cannot buy a building, accede the war, voice, lease a car or sip alcoholic. How is it probable later to do a wisdom judgment on incoming in a juridically mandatory association, one how is intended to be constant? Johnson Foliage Volumes Office Space Abounding in Emotion. Thou aware how chant, I'm upcoming of by Diana Ross, she asks as we climb up in her vehicle. She starts belt out the lyric, I wish the planet to aware. Down there's a new me upcoming of. And I fair had to dwell. And I wish to offer. I'm fully favorable. The is precisely which's event, she says. Human beings are upcoming of. My heart is so lucky law currently. She has ambitions to organize a meeting for survivors of kid misuse and kid wedding, so they can courier themselves in social, fair love she did while she testified up lawmakers. So they can get it all of, she says. She knows the significance of how firsthand. A mom and woman by 5 class as a slight lady, Johnson lived in her mom in Tampa in the behind of the pastorate of their chapel. She was an just kid. Johnson and her mom belonged to an apostolate chapel and went to obligatory facility 6 days a 1 week, occasionally 7. Hats and length sleeves were required for the girls and female, they could not carry trousers or jewelry. They behaved in compliance in stringent chapel guidance, and the older generation said them which they could say or do. Johnson's mom consumable slight period in her. While she did, it was to roast biscuits and vegetables pies for the chapel. Down there was no TV in the building, but her mom would, on event, sit downward in Johnson in a coloring volume and pencils. How is the fondest ram Johnson has of her infancy? Every day up high school, Johnson desired out her auntie for dinner cash since Johnson's mom treated as a replace tutor and could hardly do ends in counter. Her auntie lived neighboring in the identical building as the archbishop of their chapel, and one date, while Johnson was 8, he called her in his dormitory. I got yours dinner cash. Go and get it. He constrained her to lie on the cot, utilized oil jello and riddled her. He told anything and later shipped her on her path, bloodstream dropping downward her legs. Johnson ran to a bathroom to clean herself, but she was a kid in the 4 class. She could not know which had happened. Following how, she was abused often by the archbishop and as well a chapel diacon. But while she tested to say on it, no one believed her, not though her mom. It happened so often how Johnson recognized it as a portion of increasing up. Her basic high school counterparts brutally said her she smelled love minnow. Few months gone while, one day in grade, she was called to a chamber wherever students acquired their vaccinations. Johnson was embarrassed. She never got shots, her chapel forbade them. She was discussed by a nursing and shipped behind to grade. A few protocol after, she heard her behalf once again, howling via the intercom system. She was to gather all her stuff and expect in the office space for her mom to choose her up. Which had she made incorrect? Thou re-departure to include a infant, her mom blurted out in the vehicle. Someone's been messing in thou? I tested to speak thou, Johnson replied. But you told I was lie. A physician discussed her and gave her the news story. She was 7 months pregnant woman. She did the mathematics and knew it was the diacon's infant. Her mom stood up in chapel and said all her child was lie on creature abused. She accused Johnson for earning embarrassment on the household and shipped her off to Miami in the archbishop who had abused her. She was omitted off at Jackson Monument Clinic and leftward down there one to include her infant. On a February overnight in 1970, Johnson, just 10-year ancient, waited in a clinic corridor. She tested to think how a infant would go out of her flesh, no one had explainable it to her. The stares burnt via her, she thick felt love and strangeness at an entertainment garden. At 1:54 m, she gave childbirth to her at first kid. While she refundable to Tampa, a kid well-being employee came by to ask questions. She figures her basic high school must include tilted off the country. The men who had abused her were adults, and if the true were too shallow, they would person statute rape her extortion. Instead of, Johnson's mom organized for her child to wed one of her rapists, the diakon. She purchased a white gown and curtain for her child and followed fiancé and bridegroom to the Hillsborough Shire Court building in Tampa. Johnson was 11. The man she was married was 20. Johnson remembers meeting at a length spreadsheet how seemed greater rather than her building. She remembers her mom talk in the magistrate. The magistrate rejected to wed a lady so youthful, although she had a infant. But a monthly after, they tested once again, the period in neighboring Pinellas Shire, wherever Johnson was permitted to mark on the dotted link. The magistrate was completely aware of her year, the license inclusive her day of childbirth. She had not completed 5 class yet on March 29, 1971, while she became a woman as a mom. So began a lifetime of load, a lifetime she was constrained to take. At first, she refundable to high school time her mom looked following the infant. But her chapel forbidden the use of childbirth monitoring, and Johnson had infant following infant. Her man neglected her every period she was pregnant woman. She had no selection but to get him behind while he refundable following the infant was unborn. They lived in the identical pastorate building in Johnson's mom and slept in Johnson's old dormitory enclosed by cribs. Girls her age play in infant dolls. Johnson found herself in actual babies. She cleaned diapers, brushed the building, and prepared pot stews. Her man seldom tell in her, she was fair down there for sex. They struggled to pay the billing. She was too youthful to aware how to instrument, so she observed marital couples in chapel and mimicked their behavior at household. She favorite student and though missed a class 1 year. As it rotated high school was the just regular item in her lifetime. But how, too much, was undertaken of her. She done it once to the 9 class but later could go on no much longer. By the period she was 17, she was in Cree 6 family. She never knew which it was love to act sport or go to the promenade or grade. Plundered of her infancy, she lose all motive. Each day while she woke up, she cried. It was her man who should include been handcuffed, she mind. She thick felt she was handcuffed instead of. She grew weary of her man's absence of supporting and desired assist of legislative assistance. They wrote her a verify for $75 to pay and lawyer to folder for divorce rate. But not length following, at 19, she marital a 37-year-old person. He, too much, wound her by word and constructively. She drill 3 more than family and was 27 while her youngest child was unborn. By later, Johnson thick felt the way of 9er family, 5 girls and 4 persons boys, and an offensive man hauling her downward. She was disappointed, weary, painful or, largest of all, irate how the lifetime had been constrained on her. It began to influence her relationships in her guys. She hollered and fussed at them more than frequently and tested her top to recall they didn't ask to be unborn. It wasn't their error. She smiled on the external, but within she was ever weeping. She thick felt useless and though envisaged drive her car off the Howard Frankland Axel Houseman's Tampa Gulf. It was just following she leftward her mom's chapel how Johnson was capable to begin medicinal. Via a new chapel, she met a counselor, Joan Gaines. The two female began speaking. It was the at first period, very, how nobody had heard to her. It had undertaken nearly part her lifetime for Johnson to discover her vote. Pardon, I heard to Johnson describe her history, but I couldn't completely know how she was capable to heal up following such a terrible experiences. I named Gaines for her prospect. She was a kid in Niner family, Gaines said me. She began to increase up lot after in her lifetime. Gaines outlined Johnson as a clever, elastic female who was acute on installation herself on a superior way. She was love a circle-bottomed roly-poly plaything, no question how lot times you bang it above, it comes law behind up. Gaines, too much, was an just kid, but she had a lucky infancy. Johnson's mom's actions were for understanding. Thou don't include to be upbringing to be a mom, Gaines told. All you include is a vaginal. Johnson leaned on Gaines and looked inside. She rotated to her belief in deity, and she scientific to pardon her rapists, her mom or, largest essential, herself. It was period, she carried out, to flee the prison of bitter how was sapping her power. The history was suffering her since she had selected to conduct on it. For Johnson, pardon was the just way to go striker, the just way she could say easily on which she had incurred so she could rescue other. Same entire country of Florida, unsuccessful me. Several hours following her stroll to the Capitol, Johnson makes her way through city to see Tommy Hutto, a 78-year-old female cut by rheumatoid joint inflammation. Game lobbying is Johnson's desire, but her job as a individual tutor pays the billing. She as well had been training behavior-challenged family at an basic high school but gave how up to attention her power on the legal meeting. Hutto retired as communication CEO for the California Teaching Staff Association and excited to Tallahassee to be close her daughters. She lives by herself in Polar Tallahassee, as necessary aid about the building and is one of few old clients Johnson sees. The day up, Johnson helping a female in her 90s who can no much longer parry for herself. Johnson flat her a lunch of minnow sticks and beefsteak French fries and later wrote out a control list. Do certainly the bed railway track are up on both of sides in the highest stance, paste an additional pad in the age nappy for absorbability, verify how her lifetime alarm is about her cervix, blank the garbage, neat the building. I observed Johnson carefully, blurting out the evident issue, which sit love to get thoroughness of human beings following you did anything but how all yours lifetime. So, I include to earn money cash once, she responded. She took the work, she explainable, since caregiving is which she's nice at. She grown Niner family, following all. She excited to Polar Florida in 2008 following she remarried once again. She and her tertiary man ran a barbecue location along in Tallahassee. But how wedding, too much, ended in divorce rate. Johnson could include refundable to Tampa, wherever all her family were. But how was while she thick felt inviting. She thick felt enforced to stake her history to do things superior so no one else would include to suffer which she also. She did not wish her obit to be restricted to mom, grandma and separated. She remaining in Tallahassee and start up her crusading. She rotated a little tertiary dormitory in a household office space and enclosed herself in her artistic achievements. They be as reminders how her lifetime is no much longer break, a voluntary of the year confer, a complimentary email of Michelle Obama on her volume, a top high school degree of Franklin Academia. Johnson took classes on the internet and at the age of 55, marched in the high school's 2015 beginning right. By her desktop is a map one of her sons shipped her on Valentine's date. Of all the moms in the planet, you are by far the top the planet has seen. In spite her struggles, Johnson has no regrets on possessing her family. I yet sense love I did all I could do as a parental. I gave it my top shooting in which I also, she said me. I don't sense less than rather than a mom. On the night at Hutto's building, her maternal low instincts boot in pinion. She fixes lunch for Hutto and plops downward on the residing chamber sofa. It feels love a length day following her rounds at the Capitol. Occasionally, the two female look tire of luck along. This evening, they solve on talk instead of. They talk the misery of aging and one of their favorite foods, grilled chick of the Publix grocery. Or, they say on the one item they include in overall, creature and just kid. I wonder down there's nice and bad to how, Hutto says. Which's the nice portion? Johnson asks. So, you get all the focus. You get to select which you wish. He's entertainment. I don't aware any fun portion, Johnson says, increase her eyelids. Hutto knows largest of Johnson's history and was, love other, in unbelief how such a things could occur in America. She's joyful to aware the kid wedding draft is so on its way to proper law and how he's received focus. Which inflicted you to begin defending? Hutto asks, her curious piqued. Johnson mentions her volume and a non-profit she start up to supporting misuse victims following she began talk at little gatherings and carried out the requirement. Hutto says she knew of one lady in her top high school who got pregnant woman, had her infant and later came behind to high school. But she didn't get marital. Did you aware down there were above 200,000 kid marriages in America in the recent 14-year, Johnson says. Above 16,000 were in Florida. How's wonderful, Hutto replies. I had no concept. How did we not aware? Johnson brings up her own instance. Same clinic knew. The high school knew. The courts knew, she says. So lot of human beings knew, but anything was made. The entire country of Florida unsuccessful me. I sense my lifetime was undertaken of me, she says. Same ones who were imaginary to defend me, didn't. No answer seems relevant in the time, and seconds undergo in silent. Johnson looks downward and conducted a sluggish sting of grilled chick. In a few days, she will be behind at the Capitol, manufacturing her rounds, and hoping how the country how unsuccessful her will not failure once again.